Welcome back to the Sanford Family Channel. This is Shane Sanford. I don't have a snazzy intro, so I'm going to show you some pictures of what I'm actually working on this video. As you can see, I'm working on the core of the table. It's the centerpiece. It's the most important piece. This is the part that most closely resembles a craps table with a TV inserted. It took the most amount of time of all of this project, probably in the neighborhood of 20 or so hours to get this done. So this video is going to be a little bit longer than the others. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so this piece is going to be the centerpiece. This is what the TV is going to sit into, and the Valera closed cell foam is going to go on top of this, and then the speed cloth will overlap that. Those are going to be glued down. That's why this board is not as important, and it's going to be supported underneath. I'm laying down a 1x6 here just to get a good line. Check your boards, because some boards are warped. The first board that I used actually had a warp in it, so I got a straight board, made my line. This is the first cut. I'm cutting it to a half an inch shy of the billiard table, and that includes the border that I'm going to put around it. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is probably the single most important part of the project. It's not complicated, really. It's just structural. It has a lot of 2x4s. There's just a lot of bracing. The base table is made out of particle board. Particle board's not that strong, and this is going to hold up the TV. The legs are going to attach to it. The top is going to actually attach to the sides of this. It's just a pretty important piece. You're going to see me doing a bunch of stuff. I'm running back and forth. This is where my plans started to falter. I had to make a lot of last minute decisions. For some reason, one thing wouldn't fit. This isn't working out right. The structure just wasn't going to be as strong as I wanted the way that I was originally doing it. So I improv'd a lot of this on the fly. Have best laid plans of mice and men, huh? Okay, what I'm doing now is the space between the lip of the TV and the velorum and the speed cloth needs to be 3/4 of an inch. My board is 3/4 of an inch, so I'm going to cut a couple of little slivers off of that so I can space it underneath, so that way I can get the right height for the inlay. So that's what I'm doing now. So, to recap, the TV is only going to stick up so far. I used 1x6s to create the TV inlay, and I'm using 1x4 or 2x4s to actually hold it in place. So, in order to get it to set at just the right height, I had to put some spacers between the top and the wood that I was on, so that it sunk down just a little bit. That gives the nice little risen edge. I didn't want it to be flush with the table. Okay, so here's what we got so far. I got the TV inlay in. I've got the tabletop seal or locked down to the 2x4s underneath that's framing it right now. I've got a little bit more framing to do because I want to make sure this is nice and solid, and I've got to give good supports for the 1x8 to connect to. As you can see over here on the side, on both sides, it's not a perfect cut, but that really doesn't matter because the Valera rubber foam, waterproof foam, is going to go on top of it, and then the speed cloth on top of that. You won't even see these dips right here. I'm probably going to have to shave a little bit off, actually, because the Valera cloth or the speed cloth is going to wrap under the table to give a flawless seam. So a little bit more framing because I've got to give that 1x8 a place to rest here. It's going to be a lip just like this, only much higher, about like that. Then I can cut the 1x8s and put them up, route those, and then it's pretty much staining time. So this is step 1 right here. Step 2 will be actually building the tabletop that will inlay on top of this one and wrap around and give me an extra, you know, space for the players to set their things, roll their dice, stuff like that. And the top layer will also have inlays that will lay over the top of it, and it will be modular. A little ambitious. I've got a lot of work to do still on the top. But all in all, it's going good so far. Okay, so as you can see, I got one corner done. It doesn't have to be pretty, and it's not. I used the end of a board. It's notoriously they're not square, so it ended up with a little bit of dip there, a little bit of dips up here, a little bit of fingers up here. I'm just going to sand them down a little bit, but I'm not too worried about them. I just don't want any sharp edges. This is under the table and behind the board, so nobody's going to see any of this. I'm going to do this on all 4 corners. Then I'll screw it down from the top to give myself a really strong base. Then I can start working on the edges. Okay, so of course I've got quite a few corners left to do. These are just braces for the actual top, for the power outlets that I end up putting in later, and to give the edges of the table a little bit of support. This is what I'm going to attach the 1x8s to around the edge of it, the whole circumference, to frame in the entire table. They don't have to be pretty, they don't have to be perfect. They're just going to hold the actual table and pull it into the frame and pull it into the rest. As I said before, this was one of the more complicated pieces. The entire project, I think, took about 36 to 40 hours, and the core itself took about 20 hours of that time. During which, at some point, it got really hot, and I was sweaty, and I had been out there working, I don't know, like 13 hours already. I ended up deciding to take the kids for a swim late in the afternoon, and in my infinite wisdom, I had the battery for my camera in my pocket. I had brought it in to actually charge it, and I emptied my pockets out and forgot that I had a secondary pocket for things, and the battery was in it. So, needless to say, I ended up having to order another battery, and it took me a while to find the plug-in for my camera, the plug-in battery adapter. So, there was a number of large chunks of video that I ended up getting lost in that. And then I started having problems with mic at some point. The battery, the 9-volt battery, just me and batteries. The 9-volt battery went dead on the mic, so I lost audio on a number of clips. Since I have time, I guess I probably will just go ahead and go over the hardware that I use. Originally, sometime last year, I bought a Canon 80D for the family, just to record the kids, to record events, activities that we go to, and so on and so forth. The secondary thought behind it was, you know, we watched a lot of YouTubers and YouTube videos and thought, we do a lot of interesting things from time to time, and it'd be nice to record those. Mainly it's like board games, campaigns, D&D, just outings in general. We just do so much random things, and we try a lot of stuff as well. Like sometimes we'll do crafting projects like this table just on a whim. Sometimes we'll do other types of project videos, like us trying our hands at things like aquaponics. That's something that's in our future, and we haven't done it yet. We want to move to more of a homesteading type situation, kind of on the grid, off the grid. And there's a lot of things to tie into that, like power, solar panels, and things that I could go over. How to maintain the pool, how to maintain the yard, how to, I don't know, compost, whatever. I'll think of some things to throw some videos out there for. I'd like to do remodeling videos, like when I remodel the barn. How-tos, like like the pool maintenance, how to take care of X, Y, and Z, air conditioning. I don't know. Things that I don't know that I'm learning, I'd like to teach as well. Tech tips for setting up things like Raspberry Pi with Kodi, XBMC. I used to use that. Now I use Plex. I'm not as versed in Plex, but I could revisit that and relearn those and possibly share that knowledge as well. Maybe recording some D&D Pathfinder sessions. Campaigns would be great. I'd love to record those, and I'm actually building a large scale campaign, or at least a framework for people that could actually play with it, and dungeons and so on and so forth. Got some really good ideas on that, and it's almost like writing a book to a degree. I might also start giving out Game Master tips for Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder. I've been DMing for 35 years, and I'm always called a DM. Every time my friends want to get together a group, I'm like the go-to DM, and I don't really follow the rules specifically, but that's just one of my innate abilities, I guess. So my tips would be more custom rules that I do and don't follow, rules that I modify for my own liking, things of that nature. I mean, this family, we're very geeky, eclectic. If you're geeky or eclectic, you'll find something in here that you like. I'm sure of it, and I hope that everybody enjoys watching our channel as much as we enjoy creating the content. It'll probably be mostly myself, as my wife has anxiety, and it's difficult to get her to actually record. But I think if she gets into it, then she'll do really well. So I'm hoping to have some videos from her at some point, doing baking, cooking, whatever she wants to do. She's very crafty as well. I guess I could throw in a little bit of history real quick. I am a former Marine. I do work from home. I'm an IT lead right now. I used to be an IT director, used to be a priest. I have walked many different paths in this life, and I have a lot of different levels in different classes. But there's a lot of things that I haven't tried, and carpentry happens to be one of them. So woodworking was new. I thought I'd make a table. I've seen all the videos. It's like, hey, I can do that, and you can too. So I thought I'd make a video about it. Okay, I got all the framing done, the support frame. As you can see, I put one in the side and one in each corner. That's what I'm going to be attaching the 1x8 to, which is going to be the lift that comes up. When I get finished with this part, it will almost look like the insides of a craps table with a TV in it, in theory. That's what it should look like. That's it. Okay, so I got the side support, got the corner supports, table's solid. I've got the 1x8s here. The only thing that people are really going to see, unless we use it for Warhammer or something like that, and I don't currently play Warhammer, would be the inner edges of it. So I'll make sure that the best face is on the inside. And these guys are going to pretty much go like this on the outside. I'm going to route the edges so it's kind of like the TV frame, be rounded. That's pretty much all. This just needs to be put on. I'll do 45-degree cuts on the corners, tie this all together, then I'll temporary screw it, and then after that I'm going to disassemble this piece, and these will get stained inside and out, as will the TV frame. And I can start working, I'll probably move this into the garage and start working on the Velarum or whatever it is, the foam rubber, and the speed cloth on top of it. I want to wait until the last minute to do that so that it doesn't get damaged. And then once this is done, we can test fit it in the pool table. And I can also, I'm going to build some lag bolt legs that I can attach to this guy as well. So I can put it downstairs without being on the pool table if we're actually going to use it. And we use the billiard table an awful lot. So that's the general idea. So I'm going to get to cutting these, probably throw them on the router. That's all I got right now. Back to work. While I told you that the table saw, or I bought the table saw for this project, it's good for small pieces of wood. It's not so good when you're dealing with a 10-foot piece. And the sides of this guy are 88 inches, I think. 87 and 3/4. I pulled out my old miter saw. A miter saw can do just about the same things that a table saw can do. Only difference really is that the lumber is stationary on a miter saw versus a table saw where you actually move the lumber across the saw. Each has their benefits. I wanted to have both, so I went ahead and got the table saw. But I think for this project, a miter saw would have been a better choice. And you can pick these up for probably about the same price as the Cobalt table saw that I got. It was pretty cheap, maybe $160 to $200. I'll try to post the list of all the stuff that I used. This guy, I think I paid $150 a few years ago. It's kind of old. You can see cobwebs around it. It's even got some damage and rust, but still works like a charm. And that's what I'm going to be using to finish up a lot of these cuts. Another thing that I wanted to potentially use was American Sign Language. I talked to my wife about this a little bit to do a little caption or signing in the side, and that might be interesting. It's something that we are talking about. We do teach our children sign language, and I'm learning it. I'm usually naturally good at languages, but ASL has been kind of complicated for me. There's a love-hate there. I want to learn it so bad, but at the same time, every time I've wanted to really learn something, I have a hard time doing it. It's those when I don't care and I'm just doing it to pass time. For some reason, I learn it a lot easier that way. So that may be in the future. Again, this is a rookie thing. I'm not versed with cutting angles and cutting corners and stuff, so I've been struggling with figuring out the right angle to finish my cut because 8 inches is more than my saw. And I really wasn't joking. I mean, I struggled. You can see my exhaustion and my frustration there. I was really tired. This was towards the end of the day, I think. I want to say this was later in the afternoon. It was really hot out this day. For some particular reason, I just could not for the life of me figure out how to manipulate these boards in this saw to finish this dang cut. I got it cut halfway through at a certain angle, and yeah, it just was completely baffling me at this point. And I use this saw a lot, and I had used it on another, I was helping my sister-in-law do some flooring, and I never had a problem with any of the angles or any of the cuts or anything. So I think it was just exhaustion playing a role. And I just watching myself, I'm just stupefied. I can't figure out this simple cut, and I feel so dumb. Okay, what else to talk about? The cost of this project was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $500. Wood and hardware, the lighting, the electrical outlets I already had. I just had to buy the actual boxes, which were only $2 each. So that I was able to save quite a bit just because I had the equipment already on hand. I'm not including the tools in that. The tools, all said and done, I probably paid about $500, $500 to $600 for the tools that I bought. I got them mostly on sale on Father's Day sale, Memorial Day sale, 4th of July. So, I got some good deals there. At least what I thought was good deals. The lumber was probably one of the more expensive parts. The most expensive pieces of it were the Volera foam, the speed cloth, the plexiglass, and the stain and polyurethane. Those were probably the most expensive pieces. Beyond that, the wood wasn't too bad. I mean, it did get up there. I would say if you were just making the TV frame, you could probably pull this off for less than $100. Just the TV box. If you were making the craps light table and wanted to have it flush and have like a gamer war game table, or if you played war games and played D&D and wanted to have it flush and just cover it up, like have an insert on the actual TV, you're probably looking at about $200 to $300. And the actual tabletop itself is where I spent a little, splurged a bit. That was why I got the urethane and the stain. And those 1x8s actually ran me the most out of the top piece. So I'd say if you're doing the whole table, or if you just want a tabletop, okay, if you just want a tabletop that has a small insert, then you're probably looking at about $300 the way that I made it. The legs I left off, I know in the video I actually say they're temporary, but to be completely honest, they're not really temporary. They're going to stay there. I may at some point get some 4x4s and actually build some really nice legs. I can do that. I feel pretty confident that I can make some. But for my purposes, I just needed the legs to hold it up. I didn't need them to be pretty. People are looking at the top of the table. They're using that. I don't care if people walk into the room and see some 2x4s holding up a table. Yes, it's a little bit tacky, but it is what it is. So yeah, I mean, my project, I kind of poured a lot into this option-wise. I wanted it to have the DM screen that was modular, that could come out. Probably going to expand on this table a lot with different functionality, different types of inserts perhaps. I may even make an insert for the TV area, so it's like a platform, where I could have an elevated platform on a Dungeons & Dragons like Dungeon Tiles type scenario. I really don't know what I'm going to use it for, so I had all these things in mind when I actually created it. But my intent is actually to use D&D Beyond, which I have a subscription to, and I have all the source material. I want to use that with Twitch, with the integration app that shows the player stats and information on it, and the actual map making software that I chose was ArkenForge, which looks really good. And I'm wanting to at some point get into making my own dynamic maps, since I'm saving all the time in printing and crafting maps by hand, and I have tons and tons of material in hard copy and in PDF format that I can actually import into ArkenForge and use those maps. That is a huge time saving for a DM, and you DMs out there know this. Building a campaign just is a massive undertaking. And the maps are one of the more fun but long parts. Then, of course, second to that would be stocking the dungeon with creatures and adventures and making sure that it all flows really well and links together and is a theme. So anyhow, all that time saving, I could actually dump into doing some dynamic maps like Dynamic Dungeons has done. I think they look amazing, but right now they only have a handful of maps, and I'm not a fan of reusing maps over and over and over in my adventures. I like to have a new map for each different area. Even if it's a wilderness area, I like it to be different. And I may pull out a piece of wood that has dungeon tiles on it. I may pull out a printed map. I may pull out, just out of the blue, grab one of my melee mats, throw it down with a little, it's like a, what is it, a vinyl top, and start dry erasing a map on top of it. Or I may have it already done and set to the side, so I just line it up right on top of the melee mat. This table will facilitate all that. Then we also are going to use this table to play games like Settlers of Catan, Monopoly, Heck, Scrabble, probably even play the Chutes and Ladders with the kids. Anything. One of the tabletop inserts that you'll see there towards the end of the video is going to be a flat speedcloth surface. Without the TV or anything, it just sits on top. And then, of course, you can pull that out and you can put in the wood, and you have a solid wood surface. So this table is built to suit our needs and any of the needs that I could potentially think of. I didn't want to build it to be a one-trick pony. Oh, it's a gaming table that has cup holders and audio built into it and so on and so forth. I wanted it to actually serve many different purposes and have a long lifespan. Originally, the thought behind the wooden inserts was that it was going to substitute a dining table. This could actually replace the dining table that we have now. It's about roughly the same size, if not a little bit wider, slightly. I think it's got about a couple of inches on on the width of it. But that was the plan, but I don't want to be carrying it up and down the stairs to put it on the billiard table. And the whole point of making it to fit the billiard table was if someday I start recording campaigns, which I've seen plenty of YouTubers get requests for that. And I do a lot of campaigns, and I really enjoy DMing, so that's something I could see enjoying doing if I could get a group to do it that's willing to be recorded. Then I wanted to have it in a good setting. And when we purchased this house, one of the selling factors was the stone and the woodwork and everything. And the downstairs just exemplifies that. The billiard table area is beautiful. I love it. I'm so blessed to have this house. And the work that the previous owners had put into it is just astounding. So that's kind of the background to this table. I think I'm just going to use a laptop on it most of the time to display the maps, but I like to go back to paper and pen and no DM screen sometimes, and I just sit down with the players just like another player. And of course I've got my index cards that I always use. I use tons of index cards, and I've got like some stat blocks, I've got adventure notes and stuff like that, but sometimes I like to let the players actually run the adventure. But what I really mean by that is letting the players just roam, giving them that open world feeling that they can do anything, whatever they want, whatever they can imagine can be done. And I'll just sit down next to them and say, well, what do you do now? And let them make their own choices. Do they want to go to this town? Maybe it's some downtime. They can't actually get to the villain or the main antagonist at this point. He's off doing something, or they don't have any leads or whatever. And I like to just let them go. And I'll probably have a couple of dungeons set up and waiting for them, and do some kind of tie into it whenever I'm ready to take the reins back. But it's not beyond me to sit down an entire session and just let the players run around and feel the world. Go from town to town, go explore a ruin, a really small ruin. It's a small map that I got set up. They get to explore it. Maybe they get an item. Maybe they have to fight somebody. But it's something really small. And that was their doing. They were the ones that went out and found this. And it wasn't part of the main story, and I didn't throw it in front of them like a bait and hook. It was, just all on their own volition. I like that, and it takes little work from me. I'm just I'm able to participate with them and kind of enjoy the scenario with them in that specific situation. So that's part of the reason why I don't like a DM screen most of the time. I don't like to hide roles. The roles are the roles. That's not the rules. Player enjoyment is number one. So, that's why the DM screen is an afterthought on this whole project. I guess that was the point that I was actually trying to get to in a long roundabout way. Okay, so I accidentally had the camera off while we assembled it, but my wife helped again, and here's the assembled product. I'm going to take some shots going around. I still have a tabletop to make. The tabletop will sit on top of this right here and extend it out about that far. And it will be squared off with inlays. So here's some roundabout screenshots. Okay, one thing that I did wrong in hindsight is I made the TV frame I wanted it to be snug to fit in here really good, but I made it too snug. And by doing so, it's binding the screen a little bit, but I did some testing and that's only about that far away from the screen, and it's not far enough to really affect the miniatures. So that's the only real flaw. And then right down here, you can barely see it, but there's actually there's a gap. It is what it is. There is a way I can fix it later. I can take another 2x4, sit it in there, and pull this board in, but it's a bent board. And there's not any support right there at that spot. There's no support here. The supports are at the very corner and the very middle, if you can remember. So that's what I got. Next phase is going to be the actual top. I'm going to go ahead and take this guy inside and hide it. Bye.